Hi, welcome to the Sciarone Salon, where I, Tascha Sciarone, an art historian and eldest sister, attempt to explain art, philosophy, without fistfights. Well, that's actually just Nicole, our other sister. I'm Tascha.
And I'm Annette.
And today I'm dragging Annette into the deeper introduction end of A.A. van den Braambus's mind. Annette, are you ready to have your worldview shattered or mind rewired?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So, episode 4, theoretical framing, an ideal for art. Is there a perfect art philosophy? Today we're talking about A.A. van den Braambus. Annette, did you know his book Denken over Kunst is the one book no art historian understands until like 7 months later when you wake up from a nap and realize your whole brain has been rewired? Because Annette, welcome. You're in between classes for your pre-master in behavioral psychology. Thanks for joining me. And more importantly, before we started recording, did you have any pre-existing thoughts on how one is supposed to look at a painting or sculpture?
I guess everyone has their biases, knowing and unknowing, but I always try to come with like a clean slate to something. And one thing I learned through the years is that everyone is so different. Everyone brings something else to a painting.
Yeah. So today we're not going to talk about a single ancient philosopher, but about a modern thinker who mapped out 4 major battlefields for arguing about art. And so we're laying the foundation for everything to come in the next couple of episodes. Are you ready for this?
I am ready, as I can be.
Okay. So I am going to start with a biography and background. For many of the listeners, this is episode 4, but I want to reiterate some of Antoon van den Braambus's background. He is a contemporary Belgian philosopher and art theorist. His core question wasn't what is art, but how do we think about art? He noticed that all our philosophies from ancient Greece to now are essentially abstract concepts, perfect ideals we try to force into messy reality. They're all bound to the perfect ideal of what should be. And I mean, as an applied psychiatrist, how does that make you feel hearing this?
Psychologist?
Oh, sorry, psychologist. Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm educated, but not that educated.
It's all right. I think it's interesting. Obviously, I had some art history as a kid in high school, and I grew up in an artist family, but I didn't know we're trying to make things abstract since Greek, you said, right?
You know, the way we think about art philosophy is very abstract. And then we try to push that abstract ideas into like messy reality, similar to how like economists are like, in a rational market, a consumer will react like this, and they never react like this. Like some of them react like this, but other people react differently. There are other factors in play.
Yes, this does make sense. I just never thought about it.
Yeah, but also like as an applied psychologist, you have the archetype of this type of person, or
Yes, we do use data and models to try to understand people's behavior in larger groups. But you can only predict one's behavior in larger groups, never individually.
Okay.
So I think there were always individually there. You can't predict anyone's behaviors, I personally believe. So it's always hard to say that a person is just a number in the whole database or model. It can always be a different outcome.
And so actually like what we're learning here in art philosophy is also like actually how we can also apply maybe to economics or psychology. So his genius was in mapping primary relationships. In the first part of his book, he said any artworks exist in three parts: the artist and the artwork itself, and then the viewer. Most theories focus on just 1 or 2 of these relationships. His book is our roadmap through centuries of art theory, and we're starting with the big 4. So the key concepts I want to introduce to you today, Annette, and I really want you to interject if this is something you remember, reminded about, or something, because this episode is just literally mapping out the 4 big philosophies in art.
Okay. Shoot.
So first up, we have art realism or mimesis. This is Plato's baby. The central relationship is between the artwork and reality. Is it a good copy, a perfect imitation? The artwork's value is in its mirror-like quality. Do you have any... I want to use the Dutch word ervaring, but I can't remember the English word.
Experience?
Experience in this type of art?
Yes, this is the basic art. If you go to Greek and... Well, the basis, I started learning from Greek and how they always made a perfect sculpture. And I also saw the plate desk man in Brussels a few months ago.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I learned about art in my art history class. So it was incredible to stand next to the plate disc thrower and to see how my different muscles change when I change my movement next to his and how did they sculpted it. It was an amazing experience to see that artwork in real life. But yeah, this is the basics. And just, I think it's really funny, last night I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
So I put a sleep story about Plato and Aristoteles.
Aristoteles.
Yeah, I can never pronounce his name, but I put a sleep story.
Plato.
And that being said, I'm dyslexic.
Also remember, English isn't our first or second language.
It was part second, part third, part...
Yeah, but Afrikaans people speak very mixed
English.
Yeah, you just want to be understandable. I'm sorry for anyone with misophonia.
I won't even try to attempt it. But and also I traveled for 2 years last year, which really, it put me back a few years in my English learning. So that's also a problem for me.
Yeah, I also have that I start mimicking other people's accents or the way they talk. So sometimes my English sounds like this.
Yeah.
And andere keren my English sounds like this.
The English. Yeah, someone gave me a compliment yesterday. He was like, you have the perfect British accent. And I did the whole thing in a perfect British accent, but an hour later I was speaking English with my friend.
Danglish is Dutch, it's English through like a Dutch grammar and vocabulary. If you spot it, send us an email. I know I've already used it with my other sisters, like far from my bed show, which means this is far away from my bed. And I was like, that's not English. But okay, let's get into this.
We're doing our best, yes?
Yeah, because listen, philosophy is best understood in conversation with other people. That's why I said I didn't understand this for the whole semester. 7 months later, I woke up from a nap and I'm like, wow, galaxy brain. And then after that, I was just like talking to people. I'm like, you're understanding like 1% of the concept. And
maybe you should take a nap.
Or friends at parties are giving birth to like a 300-year-old philosophy, but they're doing it with their own brain power. And I'm like, damn boy, I learned this in 15 minutes, but it needs time, but it's also better to talk about...
What do you mean, damn boy, it took you 15 minutes?
No, so my one friend was at a party trying to explain to me Hegel's theory of thesis, synthesis, and antithesis.
What kind of parties do you go to where you have these types of talks? Because I don't have these types of talks at parties.
I have very quasi-intellectual friends that didn't study, but are very interested in, like they're in the film and art industry, and they might not have had this introductory to philosophy. So there's also a little bit of a love letter to all these people. And you can see like this person is like a little bit drunk trying to explain to me Hegel's theory. But he's doing it in his own word, and I broke his little heart when I said like, yeah, you're explaining like a 200-year-old philosophy about how...
Oh, he thought about the philosophy.
Yeah, because it's very...
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so like, just to explain Hegel's philosophy, is like, okay, we have this concept, and... any concept we think is like a solution to something. Yeah, and then he was like, and then the next part of the theory is that you have the antithesis, which is, thesis just means, how we look at it, what's kaders in English?
Borders?
The borders of the philosophy, like how do we understand? I think
you've been hanging out with too many Dutch people.
My children are Dutch and my partner as well.
So you don't have English. Okay, yeah, I get it. Sometimes I can't speak Dutch if I spoke in English the whole day. And we were in South Africa with almost the whole family. And I couldn't understand Dutch for 3 days. It was an alien language to me. I just could only speak Afrikaans. Language is not going great.
It is going very deliciously. But what I wanted to get into, so then in the antithesis, we're like, okay, there are problems in this political situation, the way the trains were built, whatever, like structural, political, or just in theory. Like even how we are discussing this, how we're going to talk about this is I'm going to explain to you what Braambus said, what he's reacting on, and then what the critiques on that and how we can build on that going further.
Can I interject with something off topic?
Yes, please.
But I promise it will come back to the topic. So I live in a place where there's a lot of students, one of the best academic schools, and they build a new building, and it took 10 years, and it's put the whole city into debt.
Do we want to say what university this is?
Yeah, we can do.
Oh wait, just tell the whole story, and then afterwards we'll see if it's okay. Just like how much insider information do you have?
Okay, so you have the brilliant minds of the TU. For people that doesn't know the TU, it's a technical university of the Netherlands. And you have the brightest minds here. And on the first day of their colleges, from the college university, their professors tell them, "Hey, you're the best of the best. Now act like that." And like, they're so elitist. Anyway, they built this huge, what's it called, train station, and beautiful train station.
It's very ugly.
Okay, it's ugly, but if you look at it from an architect viewpoint, it's a great station. Cost way too much money. The city's in way too much debt, but it was a great place. But the architects made one fundamental mistake, and they worked together. They worked together with the TU. So all these great minds are so above everyone. They made the station, and because of how fast the trains come in, the doors upstairs didn't work because there was too much wind going through the doors. And I thought, really, you have the best minds, and you're always telling they're the best of the best of the best, and you made such a dumb mistakes. It's a train station. It's about the trains, and the doors doesn't work because of the trains. The doors upstairs because of the wind coming in too fast. It was like a revolver doors. Is that what it's called?
Yeah. So, but Hegel will say like, okay, you make something and then you encounter problems you didn't foresee.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of it. And because you encounter problems you didn't foresee, you have to then change the parameters so you get the antithesis. So now maybe they have to build trees, even though it was about the architecture.
Yeah.
And then finally there comes a synthesis, like, because you're now also focused on like, oh, you know, what the idiots, that's like the antithesis of what they were going for. And then you have to find a solution that becomes a synthesis. Synthesis means like they mix the original with the new, with the counter, and they solve the problems they encounter, and they're like all solved. And then the synthesis will ultimately again become the thesis, realizing there are problems that we didn't encounter, maybe a boom or anything. So the point of what I'm trying to say is like a population boom.
Oh yeah.
You know, like that they only expected 50,000 visitors per day, but now you have 2 million visitors a day, you know, and then that becomes a problem again that needs to be addressed. So this is actually the way you're talking about it in the prime example, that with the train station is now the critique is coming and the antithesis is coming, like.
And the guy you were talking to at the party was like, this is what I thought about. And you were like, this is a 2,000-year-old philosophy.
No. Hegel is like a German in the 1800s. Oh. Don't come for me, or do come for me.
Forget me, please.
We're not talking about Hegel today. The reason why we're having this art, philosophy, and philosophy podcast is because it's important to have conversations about philosophy, because you learn it better that way. You can, like, when you don't understand something, you can explain it. But when you get it like in a classroom setup, whereas you're just being fed information constantly, it takes a long while to actually synthesize in your brain. But okay, so we talked about mimesis, and then the second art philosophy was expression theory. Here the key relationship was between the artwork and the artist. The artwork is like a window into the artist's soul, their emotions, their genius. It's all about intention and feeling. So yeah,
that's for me what basic art is from an artist's point of view.
Yeah, that you have to add that layer. It's not just about
Yeah.
how good you read it. And then you had third was formalism. This is one for the purists. It says, ignore the artist, ignore the reality it might depict. The only thing that matters is the artwork itself. Its forms, its colors, its line, its composition. The story is in the shape. So it doesn't matter what the artist intended or whatever. It's purely about, you know, the form of the table.
Is it then also how the viewer perceives it?
Let me think about that.
No. Otherwise, I think it's stupid.
No, because there's a fourth thing that in the linear growth, Mimesis says how we think about art, is that there's a combination of formalism and expression. So the form itself creates meaning and effect. So the way something is made expresses something and affects the viewer. So we already talked about, like, in these theories, we have the artist, the artwork, and the viewer. The first one is just about the artwork. And the second one is how does the artist and the artwork relate. And then we go back again to it's all about the artwork. And then we go, oh no, it's the combination of the artist, the artwork, and the viewer. So that's 3 points.
That makes sense.
But then he says there's the fourth one is the way something is made expresses something and affects the viewers. And this synthesis of realism, expression, and formalism is something that was coined by Immanuel Kant. So Kant, we know, is a philosopher from 1790. I actually did put the date because we weren't talking about Hegel, we were talking about Kant. So Kant's influence on aesthetics is primarily outlined in his critique judgment from 1790. It was like revolutionary. He shifted the focus from properties of the art object to the viewer's mental experience, establishing the foundation of modern aesthetic theory. So obviously you, as a modern woman with a small m, not a big M for modernist movement, you know, obviously have synthesized this or has learned about this theory that good art should be like a combination of how the artist decides to paint, what the message, and what does it evoke from a viewer.
This is actually the first time I hear about this. Maybe I already learned and forgot about it, but I haven't had art lessons in quite a while. I'm also, I think, the only sister, because I've never told my sisters, that I got rejected from art school.
Oh, baby! I didn't even apply. I don't want to be rejected.
Yeah, I applied and got rejected. I never told someone because I thought it was so embarrassing that I was the only sister that got rejected. But Bianca told me she also got a few times rejected before she got accepted.
No, Bianca, her twin, bullies people into accepting her now.
That's true.
That's how she is in engineering school.
Yeah, that's how she got accepted at the PhD team when she was only a bachelor student.
Yeah, but that is...
A bully is a big word, I would say.
Refute their claims of rejecting her.
Yes. Yes. Bianca always says that I'm really good at negotiation and I should really stop negotiation with people. If I hear no, I should take the no. But I was like, you do it too, but only on the academic level. Yeah. And I do it on a day-to-day level. But yeah.
So do you want to like put your arguing through? Because we did actually argue right before this.
Yeah, we did argue right before this. Yes, I was doing the dishwasher and she was like, that's not feminist on my podcast.
No, that's not what I said.
That's not what she said.
That's just how you interpret it.
That's indeed how I interpret it because I was a bit mad. I was like, I just want to clean.
Okay, so
back to the...
Immanuel Kant, to get back, critique of judgment, by the way, that 1790 is like the start of enlightenment. It's taken us like 200-300 years to have enlightenment trickle down from the richest people with free time to like the masses. And I mean, we're pretty privileged and highly educated family and environment. I mean, so we know a lot more privileged people, but I just want to reiterate, like, we are pretty privileged.
Wow, yeah. Someone pointed it out to me last week. I told a bit about my family. He was like, whoa, your family's so ambitious. I was like, guy, you're doing a PhD. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and I guess it's just the bank accounts don't reflect that.
Yeah, the bank accounts don't reflect that.
Okay, but so So Immanuel Kant is from the Enlightenment, and the Enlightenment has been trickling down to the average person, that we all have agency, that we all have stuff like that. But before this, it was just, no, only rich, wealthy people had agency, and then only rich, white women had agency. I think I wrote a whole paper about how everyone without money is in this liminal position of being an object or a person. It was on hirsutes in the royal courts. Hirsutes are people that are like very hairy people. And also, like they called them like the wolf children or something, or wolf people.
Yeah.
I mean, the royal court was just like, oh, are you like a tiny person? Well, come to court, we'll marry you off. You have to marry someone either as distinguishing for you or a punishment, for someone else.
Oh,
yeah. No, but like so that you are, even though you are sort of seen as a person, your choices are taken away from you.
And when was this?
1700s, and we're talking about now 1790 Immanuel Kant. So you might not know about the Enlightenment, but the Enlightenment has been trickling down for 300 years, which is just so we all have agency about our choices.
I do about the Enlightenment. I did have history.
Yeah.
And art history.
He shifted the focus from properties of the art object to the viewer's mental experience, establishing the foundation of modern aesthetic theory. This is a juggernaut to distill, and I'm not going to do it justice at all. But you will be back with me to go in depth about Kant on a later episode. But Annette, so me and you are still going to do Kant, but we're just going about the 4 formal like art theories that Brambis...
Yes, I do love that we're going to go into Kant later.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a little bit of knowledge of that subject, so that makes me feel good.
Of Kant or?
Of Kant. He's such a professional. He was such a good routine. I just love it. I wish to be like that.
I don't actually know anything about him personally. I just know that he was an influential 18th century philosopher.
Oh, we will talk about it on the next episode. So stay tuned.
Come back. These frameworks dominated how museums displayed art and how critics talked about art for centuries. Formalism gave us the white wall galleries, where painting is just a thing of beauty separate from the world. Expression theory gives us those dramatic biographical plaques next to the Van Gogh's paintings. So these 4 ways is like a way to look at art, a way to describe art, a way to present art, a way to think about art.
Yes.
So Brambis has said that these theories, what they get right is they give us a language and a toolkit. They're very dry bone, overarching philosophies that help you understand and critique. And think about almost all of art until 1890, because that's when modernism with a big M starts. And before you can break the rules, you have to know them.
Yeah.
So that's why we are learning about,
You have to play the game to change the game.
Yeah, know the rules. But our family usually don't know the rules. So we break them all the time. Revolutionary, irritating.
Yeah, someone told me, my sister's ex is a basketballer, and she told me, you have to play the game to change the game. And that just changed my whole life thinking, because I was just there to change it. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm missing the first step. Okay, let's go.
Yeah. So I want to give you also a contemporary example, Annette, how you see how we talk about art and these 4 ways.
Give it to me.
A Marvel movie review that complains that the CGI villain wasn't realistic enough. That's Mimesis theory. The first one.
Yeah, okay, the first theory. Okay, and that was about?
Realism.
Okay, yeah.
Mimesis.
Okay.
Mimesis means can you mimic it completely? Like there's like the story told, I think, by Plato where we're all told the story, but I really don't know the facts about it, if it's true or not, or it's just apocryphal. Apocryphal, is that the right word? It's a big word.
I don't even know what that means.
It means in the Bible you have main chapters, Matthew's, blah, blah, blah. And then you also have like not official chapters of the Bible. Those are called apocryphal chapters.
Okay.
But I might even be saying it wrong, but let's use a better word. An anecdotal story, like a mythological story.
Okay.
About Mimesis theory, like these 2 Greek painters were like having one off and they're like, I'm the best. And the other was like, no, I'm the best. And then they're like, okay, let's have a final showdown. We'll both paint a painting and see whose painting is more realistic. So the one painted grapes, and all the birds, when he revealed it in the square, all the birds came down and tried to like pick at the grapes. And he's like, I'm the greatest artist.
Okay.
And he unveiled it like with a piece of cloth. And then it was time for the other artist, and the artist invited him to reveal the other artist that had just painted the grapes. He asked, hey, come reveal my painting. And he tried to reveal the painting, and then it turned out the cloth was painted. He's like, I'm the greatest painter, because I even fooled you. And that's Mimesis theory. Like, it's so realistic that,
Yeah, okay. Yes, I've seen these types of art.
Yeah, and that's really like the main art. Like what they said was amazing. But to be honest, a lot of Greek and Renaissance paintings aren't actually realistic because, like, for example, Michelangelo, like, you can't bunch all the muscles in your back at the same time. He's like, every single muscle that can be bunched, you would break your spine if you actually tried to do that. Like, it's not real. So that's not actually realistic, but that's just like, look at what I can do.
Yeah,
and
I'm so great, I can do these details.
Yeah, I know all the details.
Yes, I'm so smart.
Yeah, this guy's hot. So another example is like a podcast analyzing Taylor Swift's lyrics for clues about her personal life. That is expression theory. Someone saying they just like a song for the beat and not the words, that's formalism.
Yeah, I do not understand those people. I'm only there for the lyrics.
Actually, sometimes I listen to the lyrics, I'm like, oh, this is so sexist. And music works in a way that it transforms your brain. If you sing something or rhyme something, you remember it more, and that carves neural pathways. So I'm like,
but I listen to the lyrics, but I have fun, and then after a while I start to realize also the lyrics. I'm like, oh my gosh, my favorite song when I was 9 was I'm Tired of Technology. And I thought this guy was really upset about technology and he just really wants to go live in the forest. And that was the time when like those music things came out. MP3 players and we went from DVD to CDs. I was like, I get you, dude. Everything's changing so fast.
Yeah, well, so actually that makes me actually hate formalism, because I'm like, you don't know what the secret message is, that you're listening to. But those are like examples of in our real life.
Yes.
So the critique and counter arguments, because we're also doing the synthesis. Like Brambis says, okay, these are the 3-4 ways that we talk and look at art, movies, podcasts, music before 1890. Not that there were podcasts before 1890, but people had leaflets, like, you know, those Lady Whistledown. That's
from
also
Bridgerton, for people that doesn't know the reference.
Yeah, I mean, those is also literally just like a podcast giving your like. Did you see her dress? Did you see who made out with who? Like, ooh la la. Okay, so from 1890, we're like, okay, we can look at all art like that from before the 1890s, and then now some of you will come to me like, but Van Gogh is after 1890. Yeah, we're getting to it. We just have to get
step
through.
for step.
Yeah. So there's like this huge problem. What do all these 4 theories have in common, Annette?
Let me think. They all have problems with art.
That all these critiques of formalism, realism. Let's go back again, so that for those that are using this to study, let's go back to that again. It is mimesis or art realism, expression theory, formalism, and then the 4th one is the synthesis of expression theory and formalism.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I'm in a test setting now. I don't know. What do they all have in common?
I'm going to tell you now. They assume that art objects exist in a vacuum, outside of history, politics, and the wider social situation.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
They completely ignore context. They're just like, this is the artist, this is the artwork, and this is the viewer. Like, we had a discussion here in the Netherlands a few years back about statues that were put in the 16, 17, 1800s of Dutch explorers that are in modern context was like, oh,
racist?
mass murderers.
Oh, yeah, okay, I shouldn't laugh.
Colonial mass murderers. And the way we put down artwork in 16, 17, 1800s was for the next thousands millennia, that everyone will remember that this guy brought cotton. If you know, yeah, like, you know, he brought cotton cheaply to the Netherlands. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that did help the
Netherlands, but that's not the context of
yeah,
today.
it's not the only context. Like, we don't just focus on what the benefit for Europe was or what the benefit for white people was, but what was maybe also sometimes what was, you know, what was the wider context. Sorry, I've been screamed at if I've given lectures at museums. So
Why were you screamed at?
For explaining like how it benefits white people to talk about racism, and that discussing the impact of slavery and the colonial past has a positive impact on our cultural institutions and culture. Because if we do not go in a constant conversation about the artwork we have, your artwork ends up becoming a caricature.
Yeah.
Of like, if you go to the Netherlands, a lot of like, if you go to Amsterdam, a lot of the shops have like this old-timey Dutch girl with like braids in it, and like one tit out smoking a joint in Klompen. But
I've never seen that before.
It used to be like, and also like if you go to Amsterdam, people go to smoke, drink, and go to the red light district. Like, but it also has museums. Obviously, it also has great culinary spaces. But if you don't engage in a wider social conversation, you become a caricature of yourself. Okay. And then your culture gets exported to be witnessed instead of, you know, you actually living in it. Anyway, so I was giving a lecture about that.
I just want to say, I think I could never explain in words why I dislike Amsterdam. But because it's a character of the Netherlands, and I never felt it was an authentic Netherlands. I guess you have that with all the big cities.
No, you don't actually. The people in Amsterdam are saying like, you promised us a maximum of 2 million tourists per year. But it is something of 2 million tourists per year, and it's actually now like 2 million per day or something, or 25 million per year, and it's 2 million per day.
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't like this because our city isn't ours anymore. It is just the idea of a foreigner of our city. Yeah. And we want to restrict.
You can't speak Dutch there anymore. There's a lot of people there that doesn't speak Dutch. It's just English.
Yeah, and
but let's go back to the...
So if I'm being a little bit like weird about this, like I've been yelled at, and this is also going out to a wider audience, but like art created in the 17, 1800s are like, this is for the next 1,000 years. But now, 300 years later, it's like, okay, we do want to discuss the impact of colonialism. And should we actually be keeping the honorifics of this person? We need to have a conversation about it. So some people are like, let's put a plaque next to it, and other people are like, let's do a tour with it, with people from previously enslaved minorities, you know. Let's talk about it. And a lot of people are like, no, we don't want to talk about it. And then I gave that lecture about how it actually is very helpful to be in continuous conversation with the artwork, depending on
the context.
Because there was like a really big issue here, and I think it was 2018-19 about like, should we include talks about slavery, etc., in our museums?
I do remember these.
So let's get back to all these three theories completely ignore the context. So, for example, we can also now have to realize, was the artist a woman in a man's world? You know, like...
like Jeanne d'Arc.
Yeah, was the painting funded by a colonial empire?
Yeah.
Formalism would tell you to ignore all of that and just look at the brushstrokes. These frameworks can be incredibly limiting. So, Annette, as a psychology student, does a framework that ignores the subject's background and context feel a little bit incomplete to you?
Yeah. Obviously, of course, because also if you look at it from a psychologist viewpoint, let's say like this artwork is my client.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course you use all the theories and you get literature about what you need for this client. But end of the day, it is a person.
Yeah.
and the person may not fit into those categories that already existed, or maybe there is such a complex situation that you can't just go from the literature. It's a whole new, you have to make it like a whole new pathway for this person. And you can't put people in boxes. Same as like here, you can't ignore the whole situation around it.
Yeah, because I mean that's a critique in psychology right now, that sometimes also people's personal circumstances are impacted by capitalism, is impacted by colonial structures. I'm gonna take this a little bit away because apparently I didn't charge mine, so I'm gonna sometimes lend your cool spatula thing, if that's okay with you. Yeah, yours still has a
state of the design.
That's why we have like season 2 and 3, because we are gonna drag art kicking and screaming into its historical and social context. But season 1 is just, laying the foundation. So we have a question for the viewers. Which of these 4 frameworks do you default to? Do you judge a movie on how realistic it is? Do you obsess over what the artist meant? Or do you just care if it looks cool? So send us an email and we will read your responses in the final episode. And are you excited to go into depth on each of these 4 philosophies? The email address is thesciaronesalon@gmail.com. See, I did the Dutch thing again. The Sciarone Salon, and then SCIARONE, and then Salon, SALON @gmail.com. But Annette, which one do you default to actually?
I'm very sensitive for aesthetics, but not only for how beautiful I think it is or not, but also how raw and authentic, and is really important to me. So it's how I interpret it, I think.
So you are really into the expression.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. Yeah. And it surprises me a lot. I don't really like religious paintings.
Yeah.
From from the ones where when was Michelangelo?
He was in the Renaissance, so that's...
Yeah, the Renaissance. That's right. I saw a Renaissance painting a few months ago, and I started crying. Because the colors worked so well with each other, and they complemented each other so well.
Yeah.
Normally, I just look at these paintings and walk away.
Yeah.
But the aesthetic of the colors were so beautiful. It really had a huge impact on me. And I have that with everything with the aesthetics, from raw emotion to authenticity.
Because do you know the church? Why I always say art history is actually masterclass in deconstructing propaganda. Is because all art that's like in the architecture, the art, everything in the art, everything in the, what's it called again, the church, is made for you to elicit like this strong emotional feeling.
Yeah.
Like the place the nuns or the pastor or whoever or the deacon, whatever, stands, and he goes and it goes into the vaults of the ceiling and it cascades over everything. That is supposed to elicit like an emotional response from you.
Yeah.
Singing together elicits an emotional response, binds you. The artwork, the way the person looks at you, the composition is didactic, making me you have to believe in the salvation of your soul. And a lot of the people coming to church were actually couldn't read or write. Yeah. So they had to be educated through pictures. And sometimes that means some churches also have this little man that looks like it's shitting on you. And it's supposed to remind you not to be vulgar and, you know, and get away from your lesser, your lesser being closer to animals. And in other cases, rich people would pay artists to make the artwork, and then they would add their faces as the apostles, so that subliminally people would be see, there was a higher power that they have to listen to. Or sometimes you see Jesus, the baby Jesus, looking like a 60-year-old man. Yeah, that's because Jesus is made to look like the archbishop or the deacon of that thing.
Sacre bleu.
So that people are I have to listen to that guy because, he's a higher power. Look, he even looks like Jesus, even though we know Jesus was Palestinian.
Let me think of my friend. He was in a gossip church his whole life.
A gossip church?
What's it called?
Gospel.
Gospel.
What is that?
Gospel church is where, okay, well, I don't know exactly what it is, but all I know is you sing a lot. And it's very vibey and it's a lot of fun when you
Is this
sing.
Joelle?
Well, you don't have to say names, but yes.
Okay, shout out to Joelle.
And I was trying to make a little bit more coverage. I couldn't really lead back to him. But anyway, but he's extremely musically talented, enormously. And then when he went out of church when he was 19, because he's gay, so he had to go out of church. But then he realized...
But is he out of the closet, or did you just out him?
No, he's out of the closet for
Okay.
like at least 8 years or 9 years.
Okay,
No,
okay.
this was 10 years ago. And he even told his mom, like everyone knows. I don't know if the church knows, but maybe she filled out his name. But, and then he said, okay, I really always loved this church so much. And then I felt so bamboozled when I was 20 and I went to concerts and I had the exact same feeling.
Yeah, that's actually also another thing that we learn in art history is like we get this sense of belonging and community and ritual from churches, and the more atheist or the more we divulge is not the right word, the more we take distance, that's also a Dunglish, afstand nemen, the more we...
Well, we separate ourselves.
Yeah, the more we separate ourselves from organized religion, we crave that sense of community, we crave that sense of belonging. We also crave that sense of that, you know, that a lot of people get this when they go to a Taylor Swift concert, everyone's dressed up and they hear the music and you're all singing together, you're there for a shared purpose.
Huge problem at the moment, that people don't feel a community. It's one of the biggest problems we're facing in the Western world at the moment.
Yeah, and organized religion used to give that to us, but there's also a lot of problems with organized religion. And then we see men usually get this feeling at big sporting events because you're also chanting together, you're also there, it's a shared experience. Even me, who does not particularly like sports or anything, like going to like the Netherlands versus Hungary, this one time I went with an ex-partner, I was like, wow, this is so transcendent, I feel so connected, we're all singing together. But I also have that when I go with my sorority, like last weekend we had like this event and we all sing together because that binds us again, like psychologically that binds us singing together in one voice, and that renews the sisterhood. And I mean, we're not by all measures good friends or best friends. Some of them are, some of us aren't. Other of us just see each other every 6 to 9 months at events like these, because it's already organized for us. We don't actually have to take the time or effort to organize this event or to schedule a meeting, you know, with everyone's busy schedules. And that's what the churches was as well. And we're getting like a little bit away. But most of art history is actually made up of religious art.
Yeah.
And there was also, do you evoke something? Do you educate something? And these are also questions that we still look at, like, because some artwork is just made for didactic purposes. Didactic means to educate. I think that's also how a lot of us now both use art, you know, to teach, to feel, yeah.
I also use art I give trainings, psychological trainings, soft skills, but also mental health trainings. And I also sometimes use art in that as anecdotes or examples.
Yeah, so then it's not actually about the actual artwork being made, it's just about the process, which gets us into, I think it's called post-studio practice, which is the current era we're in. Because after Mimesis theory, you had studio, post-studio. We've had a lot of other movements past these 4 movements, but these were the main movements for like 300-400 years, which we are reacting to, distancing ourselves, re-evaluating, or saying like, no, why is that CGI not that well done? Like, I want my mimesis and you were really bad at it. Give me what I want.
That can upset me a lot because I'm a film enthusiast and especially fantasy, so they're using a lot of CGI.
Yeah.
And they should just get it right. It should evoke an authentic feeling in me and not that I'm just like, this doesn't add up.
Yeah, but sometimes this is a technical thing because like, I remember seeing Smeagol or whatever in The Lord of the Rings. And then I went to a friend who had like this giant HD television and I saw Smeagol for the first, like in high def. Like I've seen him on the screen,
yeah,
big
yeah.
screens. But all of a sudden, this high def, and you had to change the settings on your TV that you didn't see this. It looked more like that ring-ding frog, you know.
Yeah, from the Swedish Mafia, I think, or the Swedish something.
Yeah,
2007, the frog, the blue frog.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, you actually have to change the settings on your television to see it back as it was meant by the artist.
Yeah, I still now have anything to say on that, but let's finish up. Anything more to say to our listeners?
Yeah, perfect. The only lasting advice is to always critique and look at art for what it is and not what it is not. So we're going to give you the tools to be able to do both in the rest of this season. So Annette, that was our first lesson together. What is your one takeaway for our listeners on how to look at art?
My take would be is always put it in context. You can't really say anything about anything without putting it in the right context.
Okay. And that's what you learned now, or that's...
No, that is my years of studying, and in practice, that's always my conclusion with everything I do. It always comes up with, it's complex, put it in its context. Also, papers I write, it's always about the time, the place, and the person.
Okay, great stuff. So rate us if you stand AA van den Braambussen, or if we change your mind. Rate and review us, tell your friends and family, and thank you for listening to the Sciarone Salon. You are free to speculate on our accents, but I do think we did actually say where we're from. But like you heard, English is not our mother tongue, but thank you for listening. And you can send your emails to thesciaronesalon@gmail.com.
Side note, Dutch is also not our mother tongue.
It's also not our father's tongue.
Thank you for listening and goodbye.
Bye-bye.